A very good afternoon, Eswatini, and welcome to your favorite teleeducation program, Home Study. This is your favorite teleeducation program. A very good afternoon, Nobazi.
A very good afternoon, Lerato, and a very good afternoon to our viewers at home. We hope that you are ready for a beautiful Wednesday afternoon of learning. How's your day going so far?
My day is fantastic. What does today's timetable look like today?
All right, everyone back at home, we hope that you are ready for more learning this Wednesday afternoon. From 2 p.m., which is now, until 2:30 p.m., we have general studies for the grades 1 and 2. From 2:30 p.m. until 3 p.m., we have religious education for the grades 3 and 4. From 3 p.m. until 3:30 p.m., we have science for the grades 5 and 6. From 3:30 p.m. until 4 p.m., we have religious education for the Form 1s and 2. From 4 p.m. until 4:30 p.m., we have Eswatini for the Form 4s. And the last subject for the day is religious education for the Form 4s from 4:30 until 5 p.m.
Just a quick reminder, dear viewer, that we are live from 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. And do not forget to click that subscribe button so that whenever we are live, you get a notification.
All right, now without wasting any time, we have the grades 1 and 2 lesson coming up, which is general studies with teacher Debbie. Lerato will be taking you guys through that. We will be right back after this.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Welcome grade 1s and 2s. This is the first subject for today and you are learning general studies with teacher Tepsile Hlajwayo. My name is Lerato Mabilisa and also joining me in the studio is the sign language interpreter Nompumelelo Hatebe. A very good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Lerato. How are you?
I'm alright. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Okay, so today's topic is the work we do at home.
Yes.
What do you expect the viewer to have learned by the end of this lesson?
I expect my learners to be able to discuss the work done by each family member at home, to talk about how family members help each other. They should be able to talk about the parents' responsibilities and children's responsibilities. Also, they are expected to say how they show respect at home And lastly, they are expected to be able to recite their family praise names.
Okay, without wasting any time, ma'am, please begin your lesson.
Thank you very much, Lerato. May I welcome my twinkly little stars at home, grade 1s and 2s, on a beautiful Wednesday. I'm so happy to be with you today. I am Teacher Klebi, as it has been said. Okay, as you get ready for the lesson, may we sing this song to welcome and greet each other. Good morning, Mr. Elephant. How do you do? I'm very well, thank you. And how are you? Good morning, Mrs. Elephant. How do you do? I'm very well, thank you. And how are you? La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Okay, my beautiful angels, give yourself a warm hug. Now let us start our lesson. Why do we have to learn about the work we do at home and showing respect? My dear learners, as we live with our families, everyone has to work at home to help each other and to make sure that our surroundings are clean. We also have to show respect to other family members so that we live happily. Okay, let's move on, my dear friends. Look at these pictures. What are the people doing in these pictures? Let's look at the first picture. What is this one doing? Very good, my angels. This one is cooking. Next, this one, what is she doing? She is making the bed. The third picture, what is he doing? He is taking the rubbish out. Very good. The next one, what is she doing? She's doing the laundry. Doing the laundry using a washing machine. She's doing the laundry. I know, my dear angels, that in most homes we don't use the machine, but we wash using our hands. We do the laundry, the washing with our hands. Let's look at this one. What is she doing? Yes, she is hanging out the clothes in the line for them to dry. Okay, the next one. What is this one doing? She is cleaning the house using the vacuum. I know that most of you, maybe they are not used to the vacuum, but we are used to cleaning the house using the broom, the mop. Yes. And what is this one doing, my friends? Very good. This one is mopping the floor. The next one, she is doing the dusting. She is doing the dusting. And the last picture, what is she doing? She is sweeping the floor. My dear learners, these are the different types of work that we do at home. Yet there are other examples of work that we do at home, like taking care of the domestic animals like dogs, cattle, chicken. That is the work that we do at home by taking care of those animals. Working in the garden is another example of the work we do at home. Washing the dishes, cleaning the yard, washing the car. Those are examples of the work that we do at home. So we have said, my dear angels, that everyone in the family has to do some work to help. Every family member must be useful in the home. Now, my twinkly little stars, it's your turn to tell me what you and your family members do at home. The work that you do and the other family members at home. Let's take, for example, mother. What does the mother do? Yes, my little angels, the mother usually cooks. Mother usually cooks for their family. What else? She usually washes clothes. Washes clothes. That's usually done by mother. Okay, now let's talk about the father. What does the father do? All right, the father usually works in the garden. So he does the gardening or working in the fields, the big fields in the rural areas. What else does the father usually do? Yes, my angel, the father usually washes the car. Washes the car. All right, let's go on. The brother, the boys in the family, what do they usually do? I can hear someone saying they clean the yard. That's good. They clean the yard. That is outside the house. What else? They feed the animals, the domestic animals, like dogs. They feed dogs. Usually the boys are expected to feed the dogs. In the rural areas, usually the boys are expected to look after cattle, to take the cattle to the graze fields. Okay, my friends, there are other works that the brothers do, the boys do, like collecting or fetching and chopping firewood. Usually it is done by the boys in most homes. All right, let's look what the sisters do, the girls of the family. I can hear someone saying they clean the house. That's very good. They clean the house. Cleaning the house include sweeping, dusting, mopping. That is cleaning the house, cleaning the windows. So usually it's the work for the girls to make sure the house is clean. What else do they do? They fetch water. Fetch water. They fetch water usually in the rural areas where they go to the community tap or borehole to fetch water. All right, my dear angel, now you tell me, what do you do at home to help around the house? I can hear someone is saying, I wash the dishes. That's good. I wash the dishes. That's very good. Another one is saying, I tidy the room. Tidy the room. Very good, my friends. Give yourself a round of applause. Clap hands for yourself 7 times. Okay, now let us go on. Family members help each other. As we live with our family members, some have got disabilities, even when we are all normal. But we must help each other. Remember, God created families to love and care for each other. Now let's look at these pictures. Who do you see here? This is grandmother. We see grandmother and we see a girl. This is grandmother and this is a girl. What is happening in this picture? Okay, this is a dress. So grandmother is helping the granddaughter, the girl, to sew her dress. The girl cannot sew, so she has asked the grandmother to help her sew the dress. Grandmother is helping her granddaughter. And that shows love and care. All right. Picture number 2. What do we see? This is the mother. And this is a boy. It's a son to this one. What are they doing, my dear Lena? Yes, they are washing. So the mother is washing with son. They are helping each other to do the washing. As we have said earlier that in most homes we do the washing using our hands. Good. Now the third picture. What is happening here? This is uncle. We can see uncle here. And we also see a boy here. And what are they doing? The uncle is working with nephew. The uncle is working with this boy. They are building a kraal. They are building a kraal, working together. All right. And look at the last picture. You see this man? This man is blind, meaning he cannot see. So this boy is helping this man, leading him, holding his hand so that he is able to walk, yet he cannot see. But by the help of this boy, he is able to walk. So the boy is leading the blind man. There are many ways that family members can help each other. Okay, we have said that helping each other shows that we love and care for each other as a family. Now let us sing this beautiful song concerning or about the work that we do at home. I hope you are ready, my dear Lena. Okay. This is the way mother cooks the food, cooks the food, cooks the food. This is the way mother cooks the food every day. This is the way father washes the car, washes the car, washes the car. This is the way father washes the car every day. This is the way brother feeds the dogs, feeds the dogs, feeds the dogs. This is the way father feeds the dogs every day. This is the way sister sweeps the floor, sweeps the floor, sweeps the floor. This is the way sister sweeps the floor every day. This is the way I wash the dishes, wash the dishes, wash the dishes. This is the way I wash the dishes every day. Okay, my twinkly little stars, give yourself a shine for that song. That was very good. The work we do at home. All right, let's go on, my dear angels. Now we have to look at what should parents do for their children. The responsibilities of the parents. All right? Parents provide basic needs for their children. What are those basic needs, my friends? I know you learned in grade 0 about the basic needs. What are they? Number 1 is shelter, like this house. So it is the duty of the mother and the father to make sure that the family has got shelter to live in so that they are protected and safe. The parents must provide shelter so that the family is safe and protected. So when the parents provide shelter for us as children, it is our duty to make sure that the house is kept clean all the time, so that we ensure that we appreciate what the parent has done for us. Very good. Basic need number 2. Yes, I hear someone says clothing like these ones. Why do we wear clothes? We wear clothes to protect ourselves from harsh weather conditions. So it is the duty of the parents to buy clothes for their children. And then is the duty of the children to take care of their clothes. Make sure they are washed and kept clean. And when you play around, you make sure that you play well so that they are not torn. So you take care of the clothes that your parents buy you, my dear angels. Basic need number 3. Yes, my angels, it is food. Food. We need food. This is the food. I can see porridge, meat, spinach, pumpkin, and potato salad. This food gives us strength. They give us energy, strength, and help us to grow. We cannot grow if we don't eat. So the parents provide food for the family so that the family stays healthy and they grow. Okay, that's good, my friends. Basic need number 4, education. Our parents have to take us to school. They have to take us to school. I can see those children in that school. Here are the children. Here are the teachers who will teach the children. So, as a child, you go to school because your parents have bought you uniform, has paid for your school fees. Education is a basic need. What you must do as a child at school is to work hard so that you pass. You work hard so that you pass. All right. The last basic need is health care. Health care. Our parents have to take us to the doctor or to the hospital or clinic when we are not feeling well. They have to make sure that we are always healthy. We are always healthy like this baby and the mother. They have come to see the doctor to make sure that the baby is healthy and feeling well. Okay, my friend, give yourself a shine for that one. Now let us go on. How do we show respect at home? How do we show respect at home? Let's look at these pictures, my friend. Picture number 1. What is this boy doing? The boy is taking off his hat. He is talking to his father here. So, because he is wearing a hat, he takes off the hat. When you are talking to an elder, you take off your hat. When talking to an elder, you don't talk to your father or anyone older than you wearing a hat in your head. And another thing, I know that most of you are used to wearing headsets and earphones these days, listening to music. When you talk to an elder, you remove those things. You don't talk to an elder with your earphones on or your headset on. That doesn't show respect. Okay, my friends, let's go on. When you take or you receive and give something, you use both hands and you bend your knees. You don't just stand tall. You bend your knees and receive with both hands. Number 3, you kneel down when you greet an elder. You don't greet an elder standing tall. Number 4, you don't look the elders in the eyes when you talk to them. You lower your head like this, but not at school. At home, you lower your head like this. Okay. My dear Lena, now, are these pictures showing respect? Here is Lindiwe's mom is calling Lindiwe to come and help her in the kitchen. And Lindiwe is saying, no, mom, I want to watch cartoons. That is wrong. When an elder calls you, you stand up, you say, yes, mom, you go and help. And let's look at Temba here. Temba, yes, Dad is calling him to rake the leaves. And he is saying, yes, Dad, he is raking the leaves. But when Temba says, no, Dad, I'm riding my bike, that is wrong. It's not showing respect. Lastly, my friends, when you take or receive, you thank people using their family praise names. All right? Like in this picture, you just say, this boy is saying, Nkosi Dlamini wena wegnene. So you praise the family praise names. Like my surname is Hlachwayo Ngwanya Mhayise Mapengete. You are going to ask your parent to tell you the family praise names. Okay, my dear friends. Now, the work to do at home, the work you must do on page 5 and 6, you are going to draw pictures that show how you help your family. Okay, on page 7, you draw how your family helps you. Then lastly, you ask your parents to help you recite your family praise names. Thank you very much, my friend, for today. I hope you have enjoyed today's lesson. I was very pleased to be with you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Teacher Hlachwayo. This was a very interesting lesson. I hope when you come again next time, we're going to sing and you're going to teach the grade 1s and 2s about responsibility and work at home.
Thank you very much, Lerato. I enjoyed too.
Okay. Now, if you are in grade 3 and grade 4, please get closer to your screen because your religious education teacher, Monde Dlamini, will be back to teach you about the ways of worship in Christianity. We'll be back after this.
TV license pay and win competition. Fabulous prizes up for grabs. Don't miss out on the TV license pay and win competition. The competition will run from the 30th of September to 10th November 2020. Prizes include set-top boxes, a TV set, DSTV decoders, cash and IT analysis for a winning business. To enter the competition by the Times of Eswatini, cut out the filled in strip and drop it off at any of the Times offices or upload cut out to https://tvlcom.jelele.com. The competition is open to individuals 18 years and older and businesses too. Entrants must be in possession of devices which are capable of communication or transmitting or recording TV signals. The more the entries meet, the higher the chances of winning. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome grade 3s and 4s. This is the second subject for today and you are learning religious education with teacher Monde Dlamini. My name is Lirato Mabilisa and also joining me in the studio is the sign language interpreter Nomcebo Dlamini. A very good afternoon, teacher Dlamini.
Afternoon, Loretta. How are you?
I'm alright. How are you today?
I'm good.
Okay. So today's topic is the ways of worship in Christianity.
Yes.
What would you expect the viewer to have learned by the end of this lesson?
By the end of today's lesson, I expect my learner to be able to list different ways of worshiping God. They should also be able to describe the ways of worshiping God. And thirdly, they should be able to explain why worship is important in Christianity or for Christians.
Okay, without wasting any time, Miss Monde, please may you begin your lesson.
Thank you, Larato. Okay, as Larato said, today's lesson is on the ways in which Christians worship God. But before we get into today's lesson, my learner at home, I hope you do have with you a piece of paper or a notebook that you're going to use for taking down notes, as well as a pencil or a pen and an RSV Holy Bible. But if you don't have an RSV Holy Bible, you can use any other English version Bible. Okay, I hope you're now ready for the lesson. So what is the rationale or the importance of today's lesson? Today's lesson aims to make the learner aware that worship differs from one denomination to another or from one church to another. We also hope to encourage tolerance and respect for each other's way of worshiping God. Now, there are a few keywords that I've highlighted here that we're going to come across in today's lesson, and I would like for us to go over these keywords and find their meanings before we proceed with the lesson. The keywords are worship, church, preaching, offerings, and lastly, hymns. What is worship? Worship means praising God and showing how much you love Him. That is what worship means. Our second keyword is church. What is a church? A church is a place or a building used for public Christian worship. Our third keyword is preaching. When we are preaching, we are sharing the word of God to a group of people, usually in a church. And our fourth keyword is offering. An offering is a contribution, especially of money, given to a church. Our last keyword is hymns. Hymns are religious songs or poems of praise to God. So I hope you've taken note of the meanings of those words that I've just given you. Now, if I can just take you back to the lesson we did on creation, which is the order of creation, as given to us in the Holy Bible in the book of Genesis chapter 1. You remember that we said God created everything that we see in 6 days. And on the seventh day, God rested. Now, God did not only rest on the seventh day. Genesis chapter 2, verses 2 to 3 says, "And on the seventh day, God finished his work which he had done, and he rested. God blessed the seventh day and he hallowed it. The word hallowed means made it holy. The Holy Bible tells us that God blessed the seventh day and made it a holy day as a day of rest and worship unto him. The Bible further tells us in the book of Exodus chapter 20 from verses 8 to 10 to remember the Sabbath or the seventh day to keep it holy. Now, it doesn't matter which day you take as your seventh day, which is your day of rest or worship, because others might worship on a Saturday, others might worship on a Sunday. It depends how you count your days of the week. For instance, if you're going to say the week starts on Monday, so meaning you're going to start counting from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then Sunday becomes your Sabbath or your seventh day. But there are some of us who start counting the week from Sunday. So if we count from Sunday, then it's going to be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Saturday becomes our Sabbath or our day of worship and rest. Now, where do Christians worship? In grade 1 and in grade 2, you learned that the main place of worship for Christians is the church. Now, people may also worship in a tent, a home, a classroom, or under a tree. We also learned that we have different churches in Eswatini, e.g., the Methodist Church, the Roman Catholic Church, the Zionist Church, as well as different ministries or Pentecostal churches. Now, today's lesson is focusing on the ways of worshiping God. It's important, dear learner, to note that worship differs from one denomination to another. What does this mean? It means that Christians worship God in many different ways. Now, we are going to look at the different ways in which Christians worship God, making reference to some scriptures that are found in the Holy Bible. Number 1, Christians worship God by attending a religious service. Hebrews chapter 10 verse 25 tells us not to neglect to meet together as is the habit of some. I know that now we have restrictions because of the coronavirus, and some of us have not been able to go to church from the beginning of lockdown. But this does not mean that we cannot meet together as a family and pray together. So you can choose, maybe you can do it in the morning, or before you go to bed, you meet as a family, read some scriptures and pray together, because it is important that we meet together as believers and pray. Christians also worship God by giving offerings. Malachi chapter 3 verse 10 says, "Bring the full tithe into my storehouse, that there may be food in my house." So when we are giving offerings in church, we are not just giving out money. That is a way in which we worship God. Number 3, Christians also worship through praying. The Bible in Romans 12 chapter 12 encourages us to be constant in prayer. And fourthly, that is number 4, as Christians we also worship God by singing. Isaiah chapter 42 verse 10 says, "Sing to the Lord a new song, his praise from the end of the world." And number 5, we have reading the Bible. And we find this in Joshua 1 chapter 8. I know this is a very common memory verse that you are given in Sunday school. It says, "This book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night. This book of the law refers to the Bible. The book of the law is the Holy Bible. Dancing is another way in which Christians worship God. Psalm 149 verse 3 says, "Let them praise his name with dancing." So when we are dancing in church, we are also worshiping God. Preaching is another way in which Christians worship God. Mark chapter 16 verse 15 says, "And he said to them," he referring to the Lord Jesus Christ, he said to them, "Go into all the world and preach the gospel." I'll go over these ways in which Christians worship God. We said that Christians can worship God through attending a religious service. They can also worship God by giving offerings in church. Christians also worship God through praying. Praying is another way in which Christians worship God. We also said that Christians worship God through singing, reading the Bible, dancing, and preaching. But these are not the only ways in which Christians worship God. We can also worship God through fasting. When you don't eat for a certain period of time and you mix that with prayer, because fasting goes together with praying. Clapping hands is another way in which we worship God. And some can also worship God by bowing down their heads as well as kneeling. We are now going to describe some of the different ways in which Christians worship God. We are going to start with praying. How do Christians pray? Praying can be done quietly by ourselves or aloud. When praying, some people may hold hands or even close their eyes. Christians pray to praise and thank God for what He has done for them. They also ask for forgiveness and help from God when they pray. Now, there's a very famous prayer that is given in the Holy Bible in Matthew 6 from verse 9 to 13. And this is the Lord's Prayer. And we usually say this prayer during assembly when we are at school. And I've noticed that some of us do not know the words to the Lord's Prayer. Now, my dear learner at home, if you don't mind, please close your eyes, fold your arms, and say the Lord's Prayer together with me. Okay, shall we pray? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. I hope you now know the words to the Lord's Prayer. We also worship God through singing. When we are singing, we can worship God by singing a favorite hymn alone or with others. And some people may play musical instruments when singing, while others do not. Dancing. Dancing is another way in which Christians worship God. Some people worship God by dancing to music. However, in church, Dancing should be done decently and in order. 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 40. I know we love to dance, and it's a way in which we express our love for God. But when we are doing it in church, we should not do it in such a way that as we dance, everyone stops praying and all eyes turn to you. That way you are disturbing or disrupting the service. So when we are dancing in church, we should remember that it is the house of God and we do it in a respectful way. We can also worship God through reading the Bible. People can read the Holy Bible alone, by themselves, or in special study groups during Bible study. As we can see our two friends in the picture, there's a boy and a girl with their heads down reading the Holy Bible. Helping others is another way in which Christians worship God. Christians also worship God by helping other people. Some people give food or look after poor people. So when you notice that your friend does not have a scarftin or has not carried any food at school, please do help them, because by doing so, you are worshiping God. When we help those who are less fortunate than us, we are worshiping God. I hope you've taken note of the different ways in which we worship God. We are now going to look at the importance of worship for Christians. Why is worship important for Christians? Worship is important to Christians because, number one, it makes them feel closer to God. When people worship God, they feel closer to Him. Secondly, it gives them time to think about God. When they are worshiping, they are also having time to think about God and everything that He has done for them. Thirdly, worship also gives them time to think about how they can improve their lives. So as people are worshiping God, they are also thinking about themselves and what they can do to be better people and better Christians. Therefore, my dear learner at home, it is very important that we respect and not look down on the way someone worships God. If you see your friend singing and maybe their voice is going off key, please do not laugh at them, because they are worshiping God. And when somebody is dancing and maybe they don't know how to dance, don't laugh at them, because they are worshiping God in their own way. We said that worship differs from every denomination. I hope you are now ready for some questions, because I'm going to ask you some questions to see if you're paying attention to today's lesson. My first question for today is, what is worship? And this question is worth 1 mark. Worship is praising God and showing how much you love Him. My second question is, give one reason why worship is important to Christians. Give one reason why worship is important to Christians. This question is also worth 1 mark. Worship is important to Christians because, 1, it makes them feel closer to God. Secondly, it makes them think about God and also how they can improve their lives. So I've given you 3 answers and you can choose from any of those 3 answers. My last question, dear Lena, is, Describe 2 ways in which Christians worship God. Describe 2 ways in which Christians worship God. Christians worship God by praying alone or together as a group. They can also worship God by singing and dancing to music and songs. Christians also worship God by giving food or looking after poor people. In conclusion, in this lesson, we have covered that Christians worship God by praising Him in many different ways. We also learned that worship makes people feel closer to God. We also learned that there are different ways in which people worship God, meaning there are many different ways of worshiping. And Christians can worship God by singing, praying, or reading the Holy Bible, and many other different ways. We have come to the end of our lesson. I hope you have learned the different ways in which Christians worship, and when I ask you questions the next time we meet, you'll be able to answer them. Do have a lovely afternoon and see you again next time.
Thank you very much, Teacher Monde. This was a very informative lesson, and I'm hoping the viewer at home enjoyed today's lesson as much as I did.
Thank you, Lerato.
Okay. Now, if you are in grade 5 or in grade 6, please get closer to your screen because your science teacher, Teacher Nkosinathi Bembe, will be back to teach you about seeds and germination. We'll be back after this.
Buhle bethu imvelo yethu. Buhle bethu tindzawo tethu. Indalo yashada nemasiko kuhle kwethu. Kuvakasha kwethula umthwalo emahlombe ethu. Hloma ngwane vuka uvakashe indlela uyikhombe etindzaweni tethu. Temvelo nembukiso ungcebeleke uthathe netithombe. Lalela ke nangu sonkondlo waseswatini akutekela ayibeka indzaba ayihlela kuhle kwelijaha lishela ngiyakutshela diningi tindzawo longativakashela hloma ngwane vuka uvakashe la phana lapha kuvakasha kuyayelapha enhlitiyo kanye nemqondo kuyawuphumuda uqinisa buhlobo nebungane losebendenga ndenga with a trip to Mantenga Falls or a sip among friends of Sibebe Brew on Sibebe Mountain, or perhaps your cup of tea is backpacking and horse riding, sightseeing the seamless streams and springs that stream across the gorgeous valleys of the mountainous kingdoms of Eswatini. We have you covered. Hloma ngwane vuka uvakashe buhle bethu imvelo yethu buhle bethu ngabuthola nasebantwini bethu.
The change in technology, out-of-home digital media is designed to grab the attention of people who are always on the go. You can now watch your favorite show, Usile Breakfast Show and Dinzaba at 7 on your favorite YouTube channel.
It's simple. You can stream these shows by following these quick, easy steps. Number 1, open YouTube. Number 2, search for Eswatini TV and click on Eswatini TV. Number 3, after you had entered on Eswatini TV, look for Dinzaba or KPS. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the bell button to get notifications of our video uploads and streams. And lastly, enjoy the stream. Stay home and watch Eswatini TV. Stay safe.
ukakhathi imbi yeqeda i-HIV kanye namalale fever.
Kubika Sibusiso Ngubane anambongwa Dube katoma indaba kalavumisa
Government of Eswatini TV ngilingithini kule nginambongwa Dube Stemba bani.
Welcome grade 5s and 6s. This is the third subject for today and you are learning science with teacher Nkosinathi Bembe. My name is Lerato Mabilisa and today's topic is seeds and germination. A very good afternoon, teacher Bembe.
Afternoon, Lela.
How are you today?
I'm good today.
I'm alright too. So today's topic is seeds and germination. What would you expect the viewer to have learned by the end of this lesson?
Yeah. So, Lera, I expect my learners to first classify seeds of certain plants. Classify flowering plants according to their types of seeds. Describe the structure of a bean seed. State the function of the parts of a bean seed. And lastly, my learners should investigate the conditions necessary for a seed to germinate.
Okay, without wasting any time, please begin your lesson.
Thank you. So, my learners, okay, thank you. To understand the structure of a seed so that we know the importance of each part and be careful not to remove or damage those parts when planting the seeds. Again, learners need to learn this type of seeds or this topic so that it helps them. And farmers, it also helps them to know the conditions they need to expose their seeds to in order for germination to take place successfully. So, my dear learner, let us look at our introduction today. So, since we know that all living organisms reproduce in order to keep them alive in the environment. So we are saying reproduction is one characteristic of all living organisms. So plants reproduce using flowers. Okay, thank you, Lera, for correction. So we said flowering plants produce flowers that in turn develops into fruits, and these fruits usually contain seeds, and these seeds, they play an important role when it comes to reproduction. When seeds are left in right conditions, my dear learner, they then develop into new plants. Now, my dear learner, let us describe what exactly a seed is. We are saying a seed is just a small hard part of a plant from which a new plant grows. We can also describe a seed as a fully developed, fertilized, ripened ovule. And a seed contains an embryo which develops into a new plant. Now, my dear learner, let us just look at some few examples of seeds that we have. So, we have the mustard, the flax seeds, the mustard seeds, the coffee beans, pumpkin seeds, and many more, as you can see from the picture. So now, these are seeds that I may have. Maybe you can list more at home, but these ones are the ones that I have. So now, let us try and look at the seeds on its own. We are saying we can classify seeds into two groups. We are saying we can classify seeds into two groups. That is the monocotyledon and the dicotyledon seeds. So what exactly are monocotyledons? My dear learner, we said a monocotyledon are all seeds that have got one cotyledon. All seeds that has got one cotyledon. Therefore, we say the word mono means one. So with the second type of seed, we say that seed is called a dicotyledon seed. Then we are saying all seeds that have 2 cotyledons are known as dicotyledon seeds. Therefore, the di means 2. So, my dear learner, let us look at the structure of the seed that is shown in the screen. That is the bean seed, my dear learner. So, a bean seed, as you can see, it shows a cover that envelopes the seed, and this cover is known as a tester or a seed coat And then, if you can look at this small dark place there, you can see that this part is where the seed was attached to its mother, and this one is called the helium. So, and there is a small pore under the helium. There is a small pore that is known as a micropyle. When you look at the seed and when you look at the internal structure of the seed, you can see this part, my dear learner. There is this part that forms what we call an embryo. This forms what we call an embryo. And an embryo is made of the plumule and also the radicle. So, the plumule being the part of the plant that shoots into a plant and the small part or the part that is underneath usually shows to be the roots, and we call it the radicle. And this main part that you can see, my dear learner, is called the cotyledon or the food for the plant. So, my dear learner, let us try and describe the functions of the parts of the seed as it has been shown. Now, my dear learner, firstly we start with the cotyledons. The function of the cotyledons, my dear learner, stores food for the embryo, and the cotyledons also develops into the first leaves. Again, the tester, as I've tried to describe it, my dear learner, it covers and protects the seed. It covers and protects the seed. And then there is another part that I've tried to show you that is called the hilum. And that part is a part where the seed was attached to the plant. And the micropyle, my dear learner, is just an opening on the seed that allows water and gases to enter the seed, usually during germination. So, my dear learner, let us look at the embryo, and we are saying the embryo consists of the plumule and also the radicle. So, the embryo consists of these 2 parts, and the embryo is the one that becomes the plant during germination. So, the plumule, dear learner, develops into a shoot of the plant, and also the radicle, we are saying it develops into the roots of the plant. Therefore, my dear learner, if you can look at these 2 parts, the plumule and the radicle, during germination, the radicle develops first. Why? Because we know that a plant needs to be supplied by nutrients in order for it to grow up. So it develops first so that it can be ready to absorb nutrients from the soil, and then the plumule comes last. My dear learner, let us look at what these 2 types of seeds that we have brings us into their plants. We have the dicot seed and the monocot seed. And since these seeds are different, that means even the plants too, they may look differently. But let us look at it whether it is different or not. So we are saying plants developing from the monocot or the dicot seed are different, yes. Then they differ by the roots, the leaves, and also the flowers and the stems as well. But for today, or for your lessons, we will discuss only the leaves and the roots. So we are saying monocot plants have got single cotyledons, as I have shown you this seed. And then we are saying also dicot plants has got what we call 2 cotyledons in their seeds. And then when you look at the leaves of these plants, the monocot leaves are long, as you can see, the maize leaf there, as you can see it is long and narrow. When you get closer to it, you can see that the veins are parallel to each other, and this leaf does not have a stalk. So when you look at the dicot leaf, a dicot leaf, it looks short and also broad, and then it has got what we call the network veins, and it does have the stalk that is attached to the stem. So now when you look at these roots, my dear Lena, you can see that a monocot plant has got the fibrous roots system, and when you look at these roots, they have got many main roots with small branches, and these roots are called fibrous roots. And while the dicot plants has got what you call a taproot system with one main branch and some small branches that comes from the main branch. And then these fibrous roots are found mostly in the surface of the soil. So my dear Lena, before we enter or we discuss about germination, now we have already discussed the differences between the monocot and the dicot plant. So now let us try and sow the seed that we have. Let us try and sow the seed that we have. And this brings us to the topic, or to the title, that is germination. So we are saying germination is a process by which a seed embryo develops into a new plant. It is just a process by which a seed embryo develops into a new plant. My dear Lena, as you can see the picture that is shown below, you can see that firstly there was the bean that has been sown there, and the bean has begun to develop its roots. You can see that these are roots, and later on it shoots up to form the plant. It shoots up to form the plant. Now later you can see that it looks like a complete plant. It looks like a complete plant. So my dear Lena, let us try this experiment together. Let us try this experiment together. This experiment, you will try it at home, but before you try it, you have to listen very careful while I give you the list of items and the steps that you need to follow. So use the following materials to find out the conditions necessary for a seed to germinate. Now, my dear Lena, please collect at least 4 bottles. For those who are lucky enough, will get some 4 test tubes. Just collect 4 bottles. It could be mayonnaise bottle or any other containers that you may have. And also get cotton wool. After that, just have at least 16 bean seeds or any other seeds that you may have at home. It could be maize seeds. It could be maize seeds or pumpkin seeds that you may get at home. So now, then get some water and also have a little bit of cooking oil and a kettle. Now, after having all these materials, my dear Lena, let us try to follow these steps. Please write them down clearly so that you could follow it alone. Step number 1. Please try and label the test tubes that you have, or the bottles that you have, from bottle A up to D. Label them from bottle A up to D. Now, number 2, please, my dear Lena, put the cotton to each bottle. To each bottle, put the cotton to amongst the 4 bottles that we have. Then divide the seeds into 4 and put in each bottle 4 seeds. In each bottle 4 seeds. Then step number 4, my dear learner, please try and wet the coating. Just wet the coating with the water. So we are saying add water to the bottle, and specifically bottle A and B, but the water mustn't cover the whole coating, but just wet it. Then for step 5, boil and cool. Please, my dear learner, boil and cool before pouring the water to bottle C. Boil and cool before pouring the water to bottle C, and add cooking oil to stop any gas from getting in. Now, my dear learner, after doing this, just leave bottle D dry. Just leave bottle D dry. It will only have the coating and the seed. In bottle D, we will only have the coating and the seeds only. The coating and the seeds only. So, step number 7. My dear learner, please take bottle A, C, and D, place them in an open place where there is room temperature, and wait for them, or place it there for 7 days. But remember, my dear learner, bottle B must be placed in a cold area or a refrigerator if your parents will allow you to do that. Now, my dear learner, after that, you have to give your experiment at least 7 days. Therefore, it means that if today is Wednesday, then that means we will check it on Tuesday next week. So, what is going to happen here? The results are as follows. We are saying after 7 days, only bottle A will show seeds that have already germinated. Only in bottle A where you will see seeds that have already germinated. In bottle B, my dear learner, nothing is going to happen except that the seeds can be seen swallowed. The seeds can be seen swallowed, my dear learner. And in bottle C, this shows what? It shows that the seeds has begun to rot. Instead of germinating, the seeds has begun to rot. Now, my dear learner, when you check for bottle D, you can see that the seeds were exactly the same as they were in the beginning of the experiment. My dear learner, this shows that there are some special conditions that are needed or for a seed to germinate. So we are saying this experiment shows that seeds germinate under 3 conditions, namely the warmth, the moist, and also oxygen. So now, why warmth? We are saying germination occurs at specific temperatures. Germination occurs at specific temperatures. Usually it ranges between 25 degrees Celsius to 35 degrees Celsius. So under those temperatures, germination could take place easily. So moisture, we are saying since the seeds are hard and dry, so they need water to be moist, soft, so that it can split the seed coat and to activate reactions that will make the embryo grow. So that is why we need water for a seed to germinate. And then lastly, we are saying oxygen, my dear learner, is another special gas that is most important during germination. So once the seed becomes active, as I have said, when moisture gets in, the seed becomes active. Once the seed becomes active, we are saying it needs food to grow. Then oxygen is needed for respiration to take place. Therefore, we are saying oxygen reacts with the cotyledon to produce food for the embryo so that it develops. Now, my dear learner, let us try these questions together. Question number 1. Draw and fully label the structure of a bean seed. Draw and fully label the structure of a bean seed. Question number 2. State the functions of each part of the seed. State the functions of each part of the seed. Number 3. Differentiate between a monocot plant and a dicot plant. Differentiate between a monocot plant and a dicot plant. And the last one, try to state the conditions necessary for a seed to germinate. Now, my dear learner, let us try to answer question 1. We are saying in question 1, draw and label the structure of a bean seed. I'm trying to draw it, my dear learner, and I'm sure you will see that this looks like a bean seed. And then you could see that I'm trying to draw those small leaves that are usually seen there. And my dear learner, there is this portion and also the small opening that is seen here. So now let us label the bean seed that I've already drawn it, my dear learner. And so we start with the bigger part. We are saying this part is a cotyledon. And this small cover, we are saying this one is a seed coat. A seed coat or a tester. Alright, my dear learner. When you look at this one, this portion, we say this portion is what we call a hilum. A hilum. And the small part here is what we call a micropod. A micropod. So now, when you look at these two parts, the first part and also this one, these two parts, they form what we call an embryo of the seed. An embryo of the seed. And you can also safely say this upper part, only this upper part is called a plumule. And this one is called the radicle. The radicle. Now, my dear learner, when you look at question 2, it says you must describe each part of the seed. So starting with the cotyledon, we are saying the cotyledon does what? It stores food and becomes the first leaves during germination. It just stores food and becomes the first leaves during germination. So when you look at the seed coat, my dear learner, that is number 1, going to number 2. The seed coat, we are saying it clearly covers the seed and protects it from being damaged by other small bacteria. Now, when you look at this one, we are saying the hilum. The hilum is only the part where the seed was attached to its mother when it was young and it hasn't developed well. So the micropole is just a small hole that allows water and gases to get into the seed. And then, my dear learner, we have the embryo, and we are saying the embryo is the baby plant. The embryo is the baby plant, where we are saying it is the one that develops into the complete plant. And then with the upper part, we are saying this part is a plumule, and the plumule is the one that develops into a shoot of the plant. And this plumule, as you can see, the P means the plant. So it is the one that comes outside the soil. And with the last one, that is the radicle, we are saying a radicle is the one that shoots first to become roots. So, my dear learner, if you can look at these questions, we have stated the functions of each part of the seeds. Now, let us try and differentiate between a monocot and a dicot plant. So, my dear Lena, for a monocot and a dicot plant, we can give a symbol table, my dear Lena, so that we can differentiate them. So we will talk about what the mono and the di. So we are saying here we can describe the leaves and also the roots. My dear Lena, we are saying the leaves of the monocot are parallel, has got parallel veins, and they are long and narrow. With the dicot, we are saying they are short and broad, while they have the stalk that attaches them to the plant. And the roots, we are saying the roots of a monocot plant has got what we call the fibrous roots, and the dicot has got what we call the tap roots. My dear Lena, for today we have learned that seeds are divided into two, and these are monocot and the dicot seeds. We also said monocot seeds have one cotyledon, while dicot seeds have two cotyledons. And the structure, as mentioned, is the tester, helium, micropole, cotyledon, plumule, and the radicule. For germination to take place, dear Lena, we have to have three conditions, that is the oxygen, moisture, and suitable temperature. My dear Lena, this brings us to the end of our today's lesson, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pembe. This was a very interesting lesson, very informative, and I hope that the grade 5s and 6s have learnt a lot today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, if you are in Form 1, Form 2, or Form 4, please stay tuned, because Nogwazi will be back to present religious education, Siswati, and another religious education after this infomercial.
Did you think about what I said?
I did, and I've made my decision. I'm not going to wait for the courts to return my son to me. I'm going to go get him.
Ow, it hurts! Hey, I haven't even touched you yet. Stop being a baby. Kandimba! Get back here! Kandimba! Kandimba! Where are you?
What's with that face? You don't feel well? How did your interview go?
Bad. Really bad.
Well, I'd like to have a cup of coffee, please.
Because I want to help you out, I
Your
really
father
can't.
won't let you.
It's just that at this time, the sales of the store don't justify hiring another person, Auntie.
But if that's the issue, I could work on commission, Sarah. I already proved to you I'm a good
Look,
salesperson.
I'm really sorry, but jobs don't just pop up because people need them.
Maybe you should find someone who feels as lonely as you do. Someone who knows how to spoil you and likes it.
A very warm welcome back to Eswatini TV. You are still tuned in to Home Study. A huge thank you to Lerato for holding it down, or aka Lera, for holding it down from 2 p.m. until now. My name is Nogwazi Dlamini, and right now we are doing Form 1 and Form 2 Religious Education with Nomfundo Dlamini, who is already with me in the studio. Also joining me in the studio is Nomcebo Dlamini, who is our sign language interpreter. How are you doing this afternoon, Nomfundo?
I'm good, Nkosi. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much, Nkosi. Today we're doing the Abrahamic covenant.
Yes.
All right. What are you expecting your Form 1s and your Form 2s to have learned by the end of the lesson?
To know how the covenant between God and Abraham was made, and how it was passed on to his descendants.
All right. Okay. Form 1s and Form 2s. I hope that you are ready for your lesson. I'm assuming they're going to need their Bibles, of course.
Of course, RSV. Sure,
yes, definitely. Form 1s and Form 2s, get ready for that. And a reminder that we are live right now on YouTube and on Facebook. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to use our WhatsApp number. Nomfundo, you may please begin with your lesson.
Thank you, Nogwazi. A very good afternoon, my dear Form 1s and Form 2s. We are looking at the Abrahamic covenant today. Of course, I am expecting you to have your Bibles ready, RSV Bibles, your notebooks to take notes as the lesson progresses, and your RE Book 1 with you as well. Okay, we are looking at the Abrahamic covenant. Abraham is the patriarch, the founding father of the Jewish nation. You will remember, dear learners, that in Genesis you will find the story of the call of Abraham. So Abraham was this man who was called by God to leave his hometown Ur to a land which God had promised to him. So we are going to be talking about that man today, the covenant that God made with this man. So I have a picture of Abraham here. You can see that this man that you see in this picture here is one that looks so submissive to God with an altar before him. So this is the man that we are going to be talking about today. Before we get into our lesson, let us look at the lesson objectives. What do we expect to have attained at the end of this lesson? At the end of this lesson, I am expecting you to have outlined the contents of God's covenant with Abraham. What was contained in that covenant? Okay, that is what we are going to be able to do at the end of the lesson. We are also expected to explain the importance of the covenant between God and Abraham. Why was it important to Abraham and also to his descendants? You should also be able to explain the importance of the sign of the covenant. Remember, I've said before, we will be able to explain the importance of the covenant itself. And then you should be able to explain now the importance of the sign of the covenant, or the seal of this covenant. You should also be able to explain how Abraham's character is revealed in the covenant. And lastly, you should be able to explain lessons learned from Abraham's character. So as we look at the covenant, we will see his character, and you should learn a lot from this man's character. You will remember, dear learner, that in our previous lesson, we looked at the fall of man, how sin came about. So now, because men had sinned, so God felt the need to now make a covenant with men, because God had seen that man was capable of sinning, man was capable of disobeying him. So God felt the need for him to make a covenant with men, to seal a covenant with men, so that men will do what God expects men to do. You will remember, we've learned before that God created human beings for a purpose of obeying and worshiping him. So that is why God felt the need to draw up or to come up with the covenant between him and men, so that men will do the will of God. So after God had called Abraham, God wanted to make Abraham his own person. So for Abraham to be God's person, God's chosen person, Abraham had to live by God's rule. So that is why God decided to have a covenant with these men. Okay. What is a covenant? The teacher is busy talking about Abraham, a covenant between God and Abraham. What is a covenant? I feel it is very important for us to first look at what the word covenant means. Here we are talking about an agreement between God and people. So if we are talking about a covenant, we are talking about an agreement between God and people. You will know that even though you have never made a covenant with God, but people make agreements every day. Some people will make agreements, and you have seen people in an agreement, they will often shake their hands, hug each other, showing that we are in agreement. Some will even sign documents showing that they are in agreement, like these in the picture that you see on the screen. These people have reached an agreement about something, and then they are signing a document that states the agreement between these two people. Also, a good example can be in marriages. People sign marriage certificates. That is an agreement. Okay. So that is what a covenant is. An agreement, but this agreement is between God and people. So that is what makes it different from other that is what makes a covenant to be different from other agreements that we know. This one is between God and people. So today we are looking at the covenant, the agreement between God and Abraham. And then as we go on with our lesson, we shall look at the word faith. Abraham is said to be the father of faith. What is faith? Faith is when you believe without seeing. You believe in something even before you see that thing. You believe that it is there. You believe that God exists even though you have never seen God with your naked eyes. That is faith. So we will talk about the word faith throughout our lesson. Okay. Now let us move on, my dear learners, and look at the covenant that God made with Abraham. This covenant is found in the book of Genesis, chapter 17. If you read from verse 1 to verse 27, you will get the whole story, which I hope you are going to do, especially after our lesson, to confirm that what the teacher had said today was true and is found in our Bibles. You can open your Bibles now just to look at the points as the lesson progresses. And then after the lesson, you thoroughly read the story for understanding and clarity. So if you read the book of Genesis chapter 17, you will find that God made a covenant with Abraham. So God told Abraham to walk before him. God told Abraham to walk before him and to be blameless. So that is what God expected from this man. He expected Abraham to walk before him and be blameless. In short, God wanted Abraham to be a righteous man because God wanted to have a covenant or an agreement with someone who is righteous. So that was what was expected on Abraham's part in this covenant. Also, God promised Abraham that he will be a father of a multitude of nations. He was going to be exceedingly fruitful. He will have as many descendants as the sand in the sea. That was God's promise to Abraham. He was going to be a father of multitudes of nations, many nations. He was going to have many descendants. The Bible says that he was going to have as many descendants as the sand in the sea. That was God's promise to Abraham in the covenant. Also, in the covenant, God expected Abraham to change his name from Abram to Abraham. God commanded Abraham to change his name from Abram to Abraham, and his wife Sarai to Sarah. And Abraham obeyed. Thus today we call him Abraham. His name was Abram, and his wife was Sarai, and now we call her Sarah because God commanded and they obeyed. Also, God promised to establish a covenant with Abraham and his descendants as well. So God promised Abraham that this covenant was not only going to be between him and God, but it will also be extended to Abraham's descendants. So whatever promises that God had made to Abraham were going to be extended to Abraham's descendants. Remember, he had promised that Abraham was going to be a father of many nations. God had promised that Abraham will have a lot of descendants. So whatever promise that God had made to Abraham, that promise was also going to fall on Abraham's descendants. And also, God promised that he was going to give the land of Canaan to Abraham. And then thereafter, he was going to give this land to Abraham's descendants. So that is another promise that God made in the covenant that he made with Abraham. He was going to give him and his descendants the land of Canaan, not just for that time, but forever. That land shall forever belong to the descendants of Abraham, even after Abraham was dead, but the land will still belong to his descendants. Also, in the covenant, Abraham was expected to circumcise all males at 8 days. Every male shall be circumcised at 8 days. This is what was expected from Abraham by God. So God expected Abraham to circumcise all males from the 8th day after birth. Then that was the seal, the sign of the covenant. That is why after making this covenant with God, Abraham circumcised every male in his house, including his slaves and servants, because that was an order from God. And that is why every Jew has to be circumcised at the 8th day after birth. This was a covenant that God made with Abraham. So Abraham had to obey, as he also had part in this covenant. And lastly, God made a very big promise to Abraham and his wife. God promised that he was going to give him, Abraham, and his wife Sarah, a son. Abraham was very old, 100 years old at this time, but he did not have a son. And Sarah, his wife, was 99 years old, and they didn't have a child. They didn't have a son. And God made a promise to them, as old as they were, that he was going to give them a son. And they shall call this boy Isaac. So that is what God promised to Abraham. I hope you have noticed, dear learners, that in this covenant, God had a part to play, and also Abraham had a role to play also. So that is why we say a covenant is an agreement between God and Abraham, because Abraham also had his role to play as much as God had his role to play. Okay. Let's move on then, my dear learners, and look at the importance of the covenant. Why was it important for God to be in a covenant with Abraham? Or what was the importance of the covenant that God made with Abraham? Let us look at that. Firstly, it was important because it established a personal relationship between God and Abraham. It established a personal relationship between God and Abraham. How? The covenant that God made with Abraham simply showed that Abraham was God's chosen person. It showed that Abraham was obedient to God, and in that way Abraham ended up having a personal relationship with God, because Abraham was always obedient to God. Abraham was God's chosen person. Everything that God said in Abraham's life went. He never questioned what God wanted from him. He will just do as God had instructed him, and in that way he ended up having a personal relationship with God. Also, this covenant is important because it showed that Abraham had faith in God. It showed that Abraham had faith in God. You will remember we defined the word faith. How did it show Abraham's faith in God? Everything that God said, Abraham believed that it was going to be exactly as God had said. So when God told Abraham to do something, Abraham will do that because he trusted God. So Abraham showed trust in God, and this trust was developed in this covenant that God made with Abraham. So it did not only show that the faith in Abraham, but it also developed the faith that Abraham had in God. He saw that God was an all-powerful God. God can do the impossible. Imagine 100-year-old man having a son, a 99-year-old woman having to conceive a son. We've never seen that. So that taught Abraham that this was an all-powerful person, and then he ended up believing in God. Also, this covenant is important because it demonstrated Abraham's obedience to God. It showed that Abraham was obedient to God. Whatever God told Abraham to do, Abraham will just do without questioning. He obeyed God at all costs. He did not question God. He did not question God's authority. So he will just do exactly as God had instructed. Also, the covenant is important because it assured Abraham of God's protection. It assured Abraham of God's protection. God convinced Abraham, God promised Abraham in his covenant that he was going to be with him. God promised Abraham that he was going to be with him. So if God was with him, then that means that Abraham was protected. So he was assured that every time God was going to protect him, and he did not fear going to a land that he did not know, because already he had the promise of protection. And lastly, the covenant is important because it confirms Abraham as God's chosen person. It confirms Abraham as God's chosen person, through whom all nations will receive salvation. Remember, I touched earlier on that God made the covenant with Abraham after the fall of man in the Garden of Eden, after man had committed a sin. So God knew that man needed salvation, and God chose Abraham to be the person through whom salvation will be brought to all people. So since Adam and Eve were tempted to sin in the garden, so God understood the fact that human beings will sin, and God found a way to bring salvation, to save people from sin. And so through Abraham, God will bring salvation to people. God will bring salvation through the descendants of Abraham. So that makes the covenant between God and Abraham to be important. And then I have said also, my dear learners, that the covenant that God made with Abraham was sealed by circumcision. I have said that all males were to be circumcised. All Jewish boys born should be circumcised at the 8th day or after 8 days from birth. So the circumcision was a sign of the covenant. We always refer to it as the sign of the covenant, or the seal, or the seal of the covenant. It is different from the circumcision that we talk about nowadays. This one was a tradition, a custom, a sign of the covenant between God and Abraham, and he as well as his descendants. Remember that this covenant was not only meant for Abraham, but it also extended to Abraham's descendants. So why was this circumcision important, and how is it different from the circumcision that we talk about nowadays? Okay, this circumcision, the sign of the covenant, the seal of the covenant, is a sign of complete obedience to God. It's a sign of complete obedience to God. It showed that they are obeying what God has said. Since God has said that they should circumcise, they do exactly as God had said, and that is obedience. Also, it showed that it was a sign that one was a Jew. For one to be accepted as a complete Jew, one had to be circumcised, to show that this person obeys what the instructions from God, obeys what God had said. So that individual had to be circumcised. Also, it was a constant reminder of God's covenant. So whenever they circumcise a baby, at 8 days old, they will be reminded that God made a covenant with them. And then they will be reminded of their duties or their parts of the covenant, so that they will stick to the covenant that they made with God. So that is why this the sign or the seal of the covenant was important. Let us move on then, my dear learners, to look at the character of Abraham that we learn from the covenant that Abraham made with God, that God made with Abraham. Abraham's character. In the covenant, we see Abraham as an obedient person. How? He obeys what God says to him, and he doesn't question. He did all that God said he must do. That is obedience. Also, we see Abraham as a God-fearing man, taking instructions from God as they are and implementing them exactly as God said you should. That is showing that you fear God. You don't question God. So Abraham did not question God in any way. Whatever God said went. So that shows that he was a God-fearing person. Also, we can say that Abraham was a faithful person. He had so much faith in God. He was faithful to God as well. He did exactly what God said he must do. What lessons do we learn from God's covenant with Abraham? As Abraham was an obedient person, we also learn that we should be obedient just like Abraham. We learn that godly obedience should be swift. Abraham did not question, he just obeyed at the very same time when God gave an instruction. We learn that like Abraham, we should not question God. Just do what God had instructed you to do without questioning. We also learn, my dear learners, to be courageous like Abraham and trust God. As Abraham showed his trust in God, he believed everything that God said. Even after God had said something that sounded impossible, him having a son at age 100. But Abraham believed, which shows that he had faith in God. So we learn to also have faith in God, just like Abraham. Okay, I have this exercise that I want us to do in a minute. It's an assessment exercise. In our religious education paper, we have questions according to the assessment objectives. Today, I want us to look at how we tackle an evaluation question. Here is the question for you in the screen. Do you think the covenant between God and Abraham is still relevant to Christians of the 21st century? Give reasons for your answer and show that you have thought about different points of view. So when you answer this question, you first have to take a stand. When you take a stand, you say whether you agree that the covenant is still relevant, or no, you don't agree. So you'll say yes, I think the covenant is still relevant, or you will say no, I don't think the covenant is still relevant. And then you give reasons for your answer. Why do you say that? So if you have said yes, I have come up with some reasons that you may give. You are allowed to come up with your own reasons that you may think of. And then if you say no, why do you say no? You give reasons. And then when we say that you have to show that you have thought about different points of view, it means that if you think yes, the covenant is still relevant, you acknowledge the fact that other people may think differently from you. Other people may think that the covenant is not relevant, is no longer relevant, and then you give that view. And that brings us to the end of our lesson.
Thank you very much, Nomfundo, for your lesson. We're hoping to seeing you soon, of course, and
yes, of
for
course.
more religious education.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much. Form 4s, get closer to your screens because up next is the Siswati lesson with Sipiwe Vaz. We'll be right back after this.
Better Health, Better Life. It's another season on your favorite program, Better Health, Better Life, here on Eswatini TV.
Ayinibingelele kunemukele babukele emakhaya kulolu hlelo i-Better Health, Better Life. Lona thulula hlelo ngunokuphila masangana.
It's all about our health, our better health today, and our better life tomorrow. In the midst of this global pandemic coronavirus, Better Health, Better Life brings you closer to your health professionals.
Ifake emlonyeni wakhe. Nangabe nje ngidla imvolo egcwele amafutha, le mvolo ngidla.
So siyakhuthaza ukuthi lala abahlala nalala banashukela abafunde nabo ngaloshukela.
Watch out for another fresh season of Better Health, Better Life on Eswatini TV. It's getting bigger and better every season. This season with COVID-19 is a must to watch for everyone in every home. Better Health, Better Life, your gateway to a healthy living.
At this point, you shouldn't feel as if you do not have it. You have it for sure.
Find something you like doing.
Yeah.
Say invest in yourself.
I am your host, Dianza Dlamini, and you're watching Fame Unfiltered. Good night and God bless.
Usiseka, uvuseleleke, wakheke emoyeni nomculo wetenkolo bahlabeleli balapha eSwatini. Sikulethele abahlabeleli abadala nabo lapha sekhula umculo wetenkolo bahlabela bukhoma lapha eSwatini. Siphinde sixoxisane kabanti ngalaba kwentako emsebentini wabo wekuhlabelela igospel konke kungidinisa simakathe. Ungaphutheka ngomculo wegospel khona lapha eSwatini TV. Praise to God be the glory.
Nguvusele mbukeli ngiphinze ngikwemukele ehlelweni lakho lolithandzako lokufunza usekhaya i-home study ligama lami ngunokwazi wakadlamini kanzi kule sikhathi samanje sitawufunza sona Siswati selibanga lelishumi kanye naye Sipiwe Sithole Vaz losavele anami etindlini tekusakada. Unjani namhla Sipiwe?
Ngiyaphila nokwazi njani wena?
Ngiyaphila kakhulu. Namhla sidabe sifunza ngekubuthisa emabito latfolakala kuleso naleso sigaba.
Yebo, usho kahle.
Okay, ubheke umfundzi wakho ukuthi abe afunzeni ekupheleni kwalesifundo.
Ngibheke ukuthi akhona kuniketa icalo letholakala kulesona leso sigaba. Achaze ke futhi nokuthi kusebenza kanjani isicalo bese siyabuthisa ke emabito.
Ngiyethemba umbukeli ekhaya sowuvele so ready for lesifundo. Sipiwe ngicabanga ungaqala isifundo sakho.
Yebo, mfundzi welibanga lelishumi. Sengiso sikhathi sekuthi ufunze Siswati. Namhlanje sikufunzako sifunza kubuthisa kwemabito latholakala kulesona leso sigaba. Kungephasi kwelihlelo ke lokho. Tishela wakho nguye Sipiwe Sithole Vaz. Siyachubeka mfundzi. Sitoqale sibuke bumcoka bekufunza luhlelo. Luhlelo lokusita kuconza ukuthi inkulumo yakhiwa ngekuhlanganisa emagama lehlukene. Nanawo lamagama anetakhi tawo. Futhi uyakhona ke nekwakha tinhlobonhlobo temisho ngoba phela usuke sewati ukuthi ligama ngalinye lidlala yipi inzima emshweni. Usaqhubeka nekufunza lolu lwimi lweSwati. Uyakhula lwati lwakho lwalelwimi ekulukhulumeni nasekulubhaleni nakhona ke nasekulufunzeni lolu lwimi. Siyaqhubeka mfunzi asesiyibukeke imigomo yesifundvo sethu salamuhla. Kubhekekile ukuthi mfunzi ekupheleni kwalesifundvo ukhone kunika ticalo temabito. Ukhone ke futhi nekuchaza ukuthi sicalo ngasinye sisebenta kanjani ngoba phela kuletinye tigaba uthola ukuthi kuneticalo letinye ndana. Futhi kumele ukuthi ukhone nekubuthisa emabito latholakala kuleso naleso sigaba. Siyaqhubeka mfunzi. Lo myeso yatibuta ukuthi ingabe yini ke lengisitako kufaka libito esigabeni lesithide. Ngibukani uma ngifaka libito esigabeni lesithide. Sike salifunza libito esifundweni lesengcile. Sathola ukuthi luhlelweni lweSwati emabito ethu angena etigabeni letehlukene. Sisuka ke kusigaba sekucala, usigaba 1 loyo, siye kusigaba 8. Utihlelile ke ticalo temabito, wasuka kusigaba 1 waya kusigaba 8 esifundweni lesengcile selihlelo. Lesikunaka konke uma sifaka libito esigabeni lesithide, siye sinake lesicalo salelo bito. Lokusho ukuthini? Onke emabito lanesicalo lesifanako angena esigabeni sinye. Siphinze ke sinake nemcondvo walo lelibito. Lokusho ukuthi asigcini njengekunaka lesicalo kuphela, siphinze sinake nemcondvo. Lokhu ke kutosita kunako. Uma sibuka nje nasi sicalo lesingu umu siyamthola emabitweni esigaba 1 nakusigaba 2 uma akhomba bunye. Lokusho ukuthi kusigaba 1 nasigaba 2 bunye sisebenzisa sicalo lesingu umu. Kanti phela besivedile ukuthi emabito lanesicalo lesifanako siye siwanikete sigaba. Lapha ke sibese sesenda kanjena ke mfunzi. Nangabe lo umu lelibito lakho licala nga umu kanzi likhomba umuntu litongena kusigaba 1. Kanzi ke nangabe lelibito lakho licala nga umu kanzi ke selikhomba lenye info alisakhombi umuntu sesitolifaka ke kusigaba 2. Ngethemba soto khona ke mfunzi kwehlukanisa emabito la kusigaba 1 nasigaba 2 uma akhomba bunye ngoba phela so yadiwe ukuthi langala kusigaba 1 akhomba abantu kodwa la kusigaba 2 sikakhomba lenye info. Asale singena ke mfunzi sesijula ke kuleti gaba tetfu. Sitawucala ngaso sigaba 1. Sitawubuka ticalo letisetshenziswako. Ticalo tebunye letikhomba bunye sina umu sibe na Lo umu siyesimbide ukuthi sicalo khulu. Lokusho ukuthi nguye make wanase sicalo lesingu Lokusho ukuthi lo usukele kulo umu. Kanjani? Uma sisakha lo sibulele lo Emabito ke lasebenzisa lesicalo lesingu sinalelithi umuntu sibe nalelithi umuthwa udothi ngetela netakho mfunzi tibonelo. Uma sisebenzisa sicalo lesingu sitothi umfana sithi umeluleki. Ngibona ngani ukuthi ngisebenzisa siphi isicalo ku na Uma ubuka sicu selibito lesebenzise njengokuthi umuntu sicu sakho sinelilunga linye. Nakamfunzi ukuthi masikhuluma ngemalunga sikhuluma ngabonkamisa labakhona. Mawuthi nje umuntu munye ngkamisa shothi ilunga linye. Umuthwa kulesicu sami munye ngkamisa lokushothi lilunga linye. kungako ke ngisebenzise lesicalo lesingu umu. Kodwa ke mase ubuka ku sicu sakho sicu ngithemba ukuthi uyakwati kwehlukanisa sicalo nesicu phela mfundzi ngehlukanisile nje kule dibonelo tami. Mawuthi nje umfana lapho bonkhamisa kulofana sebabili bonkhamisa lokusho ukuthi emalunga amabili. Umeluleki bonkhamisa sebang 1 2 3 4 shothi emalunga mane. Lokusho ukuthini ke usebenta nesicu lesinemalunga lamanyenti. Kodwa site usebenta nesicu lesinelunga linye. Besikhuluma ngeticalo tebunye lapho. Ebunyentini ingabeke khona sisebenzisa diphi ticalo. Sisebenzisa sicalo lesinguba njengokuthi bantfu bafana. Uyasibona lesicalo lesinguba. Sisebenzisa sicalo lesingube njengokuthi beluleki bakhe. Sisebenzise nalesinye sicalo lesingube njengokuthi betswana benguni. Asesibuye ukuthi sisebenta njani ke leticalo tetfu. Uma ubuka sicu saba sicu setfu sicala ngangwaca. Sicu setfu sicala ngangwaca. Bantfu londvu kucale ngwaca. Kanjalo nabafana lofana kucale ngwaca nanguya f. Uma ubuka kenyalo uma sesebenzisa sicalo lesingube utothi beluleki sicu setfu sicale nganghamisa uthi bakhi sicu setfu sicala nganghamisa a. Lo munye soyatibuta ukuthi leni beluleki singamfaki ngalapha kunasi sicalo lesingube. Khumbula phela mfundzi ukuthi libito linebunye nebumyenti. Uma sithi nje umeluleki sicalo lapho ngu bese sicu ngueluleki. Sicu siyafanana ebunyeni nasebunyentini. Kungako ke vele lapha sithe sicalo sethu ngobe akusuye lobe. Kanjalo nakubakhi bunye bethu kutothi umakhi. Uma ubuka sicalo sami ngu sicu sami nguakhi. Lokusho ukuthi ke vele lapha lesicu sethu nguakhi. Sicu sethu sicala nganghamisa. Kodwa ke mase sisebenzisa lesicalo lesingube site betswana benguni. Leticu tethu leti tikhomba buve bebantfu. Ngiyethemba mfundzi soda ukhona ke nyalo kwehlukanisa ukuthi sicalo ngasinye sisebenta neticu letinjani. Asesibuke ke nyalo ukuthi kusigaba sekucala sithola luphi ihlobo lwemabito. Naka mfundzi ukuthi isigaba sekucala sisibita ngokuthi isigaba sebantfu. Ngoba onke emabito latholakala kulesigaba sethu leso akhomba bantfu. Aso ubuke phela uma sithi umuntu ngumuntu vele. Umntfwana umuntfu naye. Lamanye ke emabito lesitowathola solo nawo akhomba abantu. Sinawo emabito muntu. Yini libito muntu? Libito lelakhiwa lisuselwa esentweni likhomba umuntu. Njengekuthini umakhi ngisusele esentweni esithi yakha. Umfundzi ngisusele esentweni esithi fundza. Nanga nalonye ihlobo lwemabito. Sinemabito lakhomba tive. Njengokuthi umtswana umsuthu. Naka mfundzi onke emabito latholakala esigabeni sekucala akhomba bantfu. Angeke ulithole lelinye leselikhomba lenye info. Sendlulela kusigaba 1A. Sigaba 1A utongunakela mfundzi ukuthi cishe elinyenti lalamabito lide sicalo lesibonakalako uma lelibito likhomba bunye. Njengakunawa nje emabito uma sithi make noma gogo noma sithi babe kude sicalo lesisibonile lapho. Phela nangabe kusicalo kumele kukhone kuvela kuwo onke lamabito. Kude ke lokufana nako lokuvelako kulawo mabito. Usolwimi ke bathi lesicalo sethu sisuke sifihlekile. Sibonakala kahle nangabe sokusebenzisa emshweni. Njengokuthi make uyapheka. Lapho sivumelwano senhloko sesitoba ngu sesiyavela lapha kulesento sethu uma sesakha kuba semshweni kuba sivumelwano senhloko. Noko ke mfundisi sinawo ke lamanye emabito kusona lesigaba sethu isigaba 1A wona ayasikhomba sicalo lesingu u. Uma sithi nje unina mangithi unina angithuki emfundisi ngisuke ngithi make wakhe. Uma ngithi uyise nakhona ngithi babe wakhe angethuki. Uma ngithi unyoko akusiyo inhlamba leyo ngithi make wakho. Uma ngithi uyihlo nayo akusiyo inhlamba ngithi babe wakho. Lapho ke siyabonakala nasiyasicalo lesingu u. Buka phela ukhona u ku unina, ukhona u ku uyise, unyoko, uyihlo. Lawo mabito lawo ayasiveta sicalo lesingu u. Wanake mane. Kanti lamanye site ede sicalo lesibonakalako uma lelibito likhomba bunye. Ebunyendini ke khona sisebenzisa sicalo lesingubo. Uyasho ukuthi bo make, bo gogo, bo yise. Utobona ke libito nje laze lathi uma usolisa ebunyendini wathi bo shothi likuye isigaba 1A. Kutholakala luphike hlobo lemabito kusigaba 1A. Siyawathola emabito ngco. Libito ngco ligama lesibita ngalo umuntu nale lakho nje mfundisi libito ngco. Nali nje lami siphiwe libito ngco ngena kusigaba 1A sithole sibongo leso naso siyangena kusigaba 1A. Ingani noma soyisa ebunyendini udothi bosiphiwe udosho ukuthi bosithole. Uthathola futhi emabito lakhomba buhlobo. Gogo malume dihlobo leto. Sithole emabito lakhomba tilwane. Uma sithi logwaja sithi ncetse tilwane leto. Netinyanga temnyaka akusito tonke ke letongena kulesigaba. Utotibuka nje mfundzi letikhonako kungena njenganati bimbidvwane mabasa. Sibeke namabito la imifakela. Imifakela yini mfundzi kulamabito leswasusela kule tinye tilwimi njengashukela pende sisusele kulolunye lwimi beka ngasiwo esiswati. Asesingeneke nyalo kusigaba 2. Sigaba 2 ebunyeni usebenzisa sicalo lesingu umu asebenzise sicalo lesingu umu sicalo khulu ungumake walesicalo lesingu uma usebenzise umu ngitotsini umuti sinake sicu sami umukhwa sinake sicu sami kanjalo uma ngisebenzise ndothi umthanyelo sinake lesicu umendvo sinake lesicu uyakunaka mfundzi lokho sicu sami sinjani ke uma ngisebenzise sicu sami sinelilunga linye nangu uyaphela umuti munye ngamisa kulesicu ngu shothi ilunga linye umukhwa sicu sami sinelunga linye nangu uyaphela munye kodwa ke masothi umthanyelo sicu sami sesinemalunga lamanyenti bongamisa banyenti. Ebunyentini ke khona sisebenzisa sicalo lesingu imi kube na imi sicalo khulu ngilesinye sicalo. Dibonelo temabito imiti sinake sicu imithanyelo sinake sicu. Mangithiteke ndothini imendvo sinake sicu imeco sinake sicu. Sicu sami sinjani ke uma ngisebenzise imi? Sicu sami ke nyalo sesicala ngangwaca. Buka phela kuna t. Kanti ngalapha sicu sami sicala ngangwaca t. Imithanyelo. Ku sicu sami sicala nganghamisa phela unghamisa imendvo imeco. Ngithola luphi ke hlobo lwemabito kusigaba 2. Ngithola emabito etihlahla. Mangithi umganu sihlahla leso yemfundzi. Umntulwa sihlahla. Sithole emabito emifula. Mangithi umtilane umfula loyo. Sithole emabitonvo Emabitonvo asuselwa esendweni akhomba invo. Uma ngithi umdwebo libitonvo ngisusele esendweni lesithi dweba. Umdlalo libitonvo ngisusele esendweni lesithi dlala. Sithole emabito etitfo temtimba. Unikete lo khona kungitshengisa sona mfundzi. Mangithi nje umlente ngakhona kungitshengisa. Sibe nemabito la imifakela bese sichazile imifakela ukuthi isuselwa kuletinye tilwimi njengokuthi umshini. Asesichubeke nesigaba lesilandzelako. Ngusigaba 3 loyo. Angeke ke usebenzise kakhulu isigaba 3 ngoba sithola sinye nje sicalo ebunyeni nasinye sicalo ebunyendini. Sicalo sebunye nguli njengokuthi litshe. Mase ngisa ebunyentini ngitsini ngithi phela ematshe. Lisonvo emasonvo. Lokho sike ngeke sichaze ukuthi sicalo sebenta kanjani ngoba bese sinye sebunye futhi sesinye nesebunyenti. Emabito leswatfola kusigaba 3 sinemabito lakhomba buve njengokuthi liswati naka mfundzi nangiyafeleba lokhona lapho. Libhunu naka mfundzi lofeleba lokhona. Sibe nemabito etithelo njengokuthi ligwava toniketa nesakakho. Sibe nemabito gcoca. Emabito gcoca endani mfundzi abuthisa tinvo letifana nako ndzawonye. Naku nje ngibuthisa tinyosi. Tinyosi into tibita ngokuthi libulo letinyosi. Sibe nemabito etitfo temtimba njengokuthi ngithi liso. Sibe nemabito etilwane njengokuthi ligunvane. Sibe nemabito lachaza abantu njengokuthi likhwa. Lisela ngumuntu lo webako. Likhwa umuntu wesilisa lomuhle. Sibese sesiba nemabito lede bunye njengokuthi emanti. Angeke emanti uwayise ebunyeni. Utotsini mawuyise ebunyeni asisho ukuthi linti. Asisho kanjalo mfundzi. Emanti ede bunye. Sibeke nemabito la imifakela njengokuthi liwashi. Asengcele kusigaba 4. Sigaba sesine mfundzi sisebenzisa naticalo sina si na s uma kukhonjwa bunye. Njengekuthini sifundvo sive unginakele ticutami sicu sami sicala ngangwaca sifundvo sicu sami sicala ngangwaca sive. Kodwa ke mase ngithi sandla sicalo sami nguse sicu sami nguandla sicala nganghamisa. Mase ngithi sento sicu sami sicala nganghamisa. Naka ke mfundzi kwekuthi si usebenta neticu letinjani ticala ngangwaca. S usebenta neticu leticala nganghamisa. Noma soyisa ebunyentini dotsi ti utsi ti. Tifundvo sicu sicala ngangwaca. Tive sicu sicala ngangwaca. Kodwa ke masothi tandla sicu sami sicala nganghamisa andla phela. Tento sicu sami sicala nganghamisa Kutholakala maphi ke emabito kusigaba 4. Sinemabito etilwimi njengekuthi Siswati uyanginakela lo si ngokuthi ungifeleba. Singisi uyanaka nalapho lo feleba. Sibe nemabito etitfo temtimba njengekuthi sisu. Sibe nemabito muntu siteswa susele esendweni njengokuthi sikhulumi susele esendweni lesithi khuluma. Sihlakaniphi susele esendweni lesithi hlakanipha. Sibe emabitonvo nawo swasusela esendweni wona ke sikakhomba invo njengokuthi sinatfo susele esendweni lesithi natha. Sifundvo susele esendweni lesithi fundza. Sibe nemabito sike sawachaza njengokuthi sikhehle sicuku. siya esigabeni lesilandzelako sigaba 5. Utawunaka ke lapha mfundzi kusigaba 5 ngokuthi emabito ami atosebenzisa sicalo lesingu ine uma akhomba bunye kube ngutine uma sikakhomba bunyenti. Utamnaka lone kwekuthi ungufeleba. Leni abe ngufeleba ngoba umela bonke bomafonkholo laba kulesicalo. Mafonkholo angaba ngubani? Mafonkholo angaba ngume, angaba ngune, angaba ngunye, angaba ngunge. Njengokuthi inkukhu, imbila, inyoni, ingwenya. Lokhu lengugcamisile emfundzi ngemibala lehlukene sengito ke leticalo tami. Nangabe nje ubutwa ngesicalo utokhipha sona leso sicalo leso kungabi ngilofeleba. Esigabeni 5 sithola luphi ihlobo lwemabito. Naka ukuthi isigaba 5 emabito lakhona lamabito lakhomba tilwane linyenti lawo ngemabito lakhomba tilwane. Kungako lesigaba sethu sitothe isigaba setilwane njengokuthi inkomo, imphala. Lamanye emabito ngaba ngemabito muntu njengokuthi ingijimi. Kube ngemabito ndvo njengokuthi inkhululeko. Bese sekuba ngemabito lathatha bunyenti besigaba 3 njengokuthi invodza. Sichubeke mfundzi siye kusigaba 6. Sitosebenzisa sicalo lesingulu bunye nalwe khona ebunyeni. Njengokuthi luthi luphondvo. Ngalapha sithi lwandle lweti. Masebenzise lu shothi sicu sami sicala ngangwaca. Masebenzise lwe shothi sami sicu sami sicala ngangkhamisa. Ebunyendini khona sisebenzisa tine utofanana nanakuya lesikwende kusigaba 5 kube na ti tothi tinzi sicalo lesi sicu. Timphondvo sicalo lesi sicu. Mawuthi ke lulwimi lolu lesilikhulumako ebunyeni lulwimi ebunyentini tilwimi. Kutholakala maphi ke emabito kusigaba 6 sinemabito ndvo njengokuthi luphenyo. Sibe nemabito lete bunyenti njengokuthi luju. Utotendela ke takakho letinye tibaya. Siya kusigaba 7. Naka ukuthi isigaba 7 emabito lakhona akehlukaniseki bunye nebunyenti. Kungako nje icalo tefu lesitoti sebenzisa kutoba ngubu, kube ngobe, kube ngutshe, kube nguchwe. Naka emabito leswatfolako buso, buhlalu. Mase sebenzisa b, boya, bomi, tshe. Ngathi lona lelo nje mfundzi, tshani, bongeda lakho lolatiko. Masebenzisa chwe kwanyalo sisathi lelithi tshwala. Tobona ngani ke ukuthi tshani netshwala vele kusigaba 7. Buka phela masekusemshweni. Tshani bushile. Sivumelano sethu senhloko singubu nangiyabule simvedile phela ngoba phela zivumela senhloko sambelana nesicalo selibido. Kanjalo ke naku tshwala tothi tshwala bucithekile. Sigaba 8 okutholakala maphi mabito kusigaba 7 sinemabito lasuselwe kulamanye emabito njengokuthi buve susele ebitweni elithi live. Sibe nemabito lasuselwe etendweni njengokuthi budli susele esentweni lesithi dla. Emabito lasusele echasisweni njengokuthi bukhulu susele esiphawulweni. Singasusela futhi etibabatweni njengokuthi buhawu susele esibabatweni lesithi hawu. Singasusela futhi etenda kuthini njengokuthi bugigigi susele esenta kuthini lesithi gi. Utongeta newakho. Sigaba sekugcina ngusigaba 8. Utawunaka ke ukuthi lesigaba sethu sisibita ngokuthi sigaba semabito sendo. Mabito akhona asuselwa esendweni. Angasebenta abe ngemabito noma abe sendo. Kuye ngokuthi asetshenziswe njani emshweni. Akehlukaniseki ke lamabito ami ngebunye nebunyenti. Sebenzisa nathi ticalo ngugu njengokuthi kubhala, kugijima, kube na njengokuthi kosa konga, kube na kwe njengokuthi kwakha kwelapha. Ngithemba mfundzi soyakhona ke kuchaza ukuthi sicalo usebenta naliphi libito. Swabuthisile emabito lasetigabeni letehlukene. Sachaza nekusebenta kwesicalo ngasinye ebitweni. Nokwazi ingabe bolandzela na?
Bengilandzela Siphiwe isifundo sakho bese mnanzi kakhulu. Siyabonga kakhulu, sethembe ukuthi umfundzi ekhaya usijabulele futhi isifundo sakho njengoba ngisijabulele mina. Sesitawubonana esifundweni letilandzelako.
Siyabonga nolwazi. Fanele isikhathi siyahamba manje.
Siyahamba vele isikhathi mbukeli welibanga lelishumi ungalindzawo isifundo lesilandzelako yi-religious education kanye naye Thulisile Vilakati. Siyabuya khona manje.
Sinibusele maswati lamahle kanye nabo bonke bazalwane eveni laseSwatini. Igama lami ngingayandazwane Health Promotions Officer walohlelo lolushasha lolubitwa ngekuthi yi-Faith and Community Initiative kafishane FCI.
Njengoba sisho sobe sikhuluma ngokusebenzisana nelibandla. Bafundisi nisho njalo namabandla anebantu akhiwa abantu lebafikayo lebangela lamaswati lesikhuluma ngalo. Ngikuyindlela nje kuba ngiyona leyo platform lenye lekubonakala singayisebenzisa kwabonakala even then singayisebenzisa ukuthi sikhone ukuthi sifike kubo bonke abantu.
Ikakhulu lubuke ukuthi bantu basitakale kwekucala enzabeni yokuthi kwanze umsebenzi wokuvikela igciwane le-HIV la kaNgwane.
But labantu bebathi disclose bona batisho bona sibanjani baphathekile bathandazelwe labo bantu labo nabativa abangcono bebasithatha hayi ngithiva sengiphilile mina. Asizange ngisho kanye ndakunika nje good example sibatshela sabayekela amaphilisi.
Namhla ke ngithe ukuthi ukuthatha indvodza ngithe ukuthatha babe futhi asade isimo sakhe sengadi kumcoka ukuthi usade isimo sengadi kuze utokhombisa luthando lonalo emndenini wakho utokhombisa luthando lonalo nasemphakathini.
Welcome back to Eswatini TV, and you are still tuned in to Home Study. My name is Nogwazi Dlamini. Right now we are doing the second lesson for the Form 4s, which is religious education, with Thulisile Vilakati, who is already with me in the studio. Also joining me in the studio is our sign language interpreter Nompumelelo Hadebe. Thulisile, how are you today?
I'm fine, Nogwazi. How are you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you very much. Today we're doing the birth of Jesus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Okay, what are you expecting your Form 4s to have learned by the end of the lesson?
Okay, the rationale of the lesson is to help learners understand the events surrounding the birth of Jesus, which will in turn will help them as they explore the ministry. There are a lot of things that they will the Jews from the birth, which will help them understand the ministry of Jesus.
Okay, all right. Form 4s, keep your Bibles handy with you and something to write on, a pen and a piece of paper or a notepad or whatever. And just a reminder that we are live right now on YouTube and on Facebook. If you have any questions, please feel free to use our WhatsApp number. Tulisile, you may please begin with your lesson.
Thank you, Nogwazi. A very good afternoon to my Form 4s at home, and welcome to the religious education lesson. The topic, as Nogwazi has just said, is the birth of Jesus. And the story is found in Luke chapter 1, verse 1 to 21. And an extension of the story is the angel's visit to the shepherds, which shall be discussed also in the lesson. So let's look at the lesson objectives, my dear. And I hope you have your Bible and your notebook ready for the lesson. The objectives are, by the end of the lesson, you should be able to narrate the birth of Jesus. You should be able to narrate the birth of Jesus. You should be able to explain the importance of the birth of Jesus. You should be able to outline the message of the angel to the shepherds after Jesus was born. Explain the significance of the angel's visit to the shepherds. Explain lessons drawn from the birth of Jesus. And then you should be able to explain the characteristics of Luke that are portrayed in the birth of Jesus. And then let's begin with the account, my dear Lena. As I've said, it's found in Luke chapter 2, verse 1 to 7. The birth of Jesus occurred during the time when Augustus Caesar was an emperor, the Roman emperor, and he was the one who ordered the world to be enrolled. When you read the account, you realize that there was a census. He ordered that there be a census. Also, we are told in the account that Quirinius was governor of Syria. Take note of this, my dear Lena, the historical details. Remember, when we introduced the Gospel of Luke, we said Luke is a historian. Hence, he had a historical purpose when writing his Gospel. Hence, that's why we have these historical details. Then, in the account, we are told that Joseph went to Galilee. He went from Galilee. He was in Galilee in the city of Nazareth. Then he moved to Judea, the city of Bethlehem. He traveled with Mary. Remember, he was betrothed to Mary, who was with child. Mary was heavily pregnant at this time. And time came for her to deliver while they were still in Bethlehem. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, who is Jesus. When the baby was born, she wrapped the child with swaddling clothes, and she laid him in a manger. Here is a source, my dear Lena, our story being illustrated. Here is baby Jesus on a manger, the mother, Mary, the father, Joseph. Here is a manger, as you can see, my dear Lena. And then let's look at the significance of the birth of Jesus. Why was it important for Jesus to be born? The first significance is that the birth of Jesus was a fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies. I hope you recall, my dear Lena, when we looked at the annunciation of the birth of Jesus, that we did mention that Old Testament prophets had prophesied about the birth of the Messiah. A good example is Prophet Isaiah. We have Prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 7, verse 14. We have another example, Prophet Micah. You are going to read these verses on your own. Prophet Micah in chapter 5, verse 2. So Isaiah prophesied that the Messiah will be born of a virgin. And Micah prophesied that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. Now that those prophecies were fulfilled, my dear Lena, Jesus was born of a virgin. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. So we can safely say the birth of Jesus was a fulfillment of those prophecies. Secondly, the birth of Jesus in a manger symbolizes or reveals his humble nature. We are told in the account that there was no room for them in the inn. Hence, he had to be born in a stable and placed on a manger where animal food is kept. This shows that Jesus is going to identify himself with the poor. That is why he has a poor or humble birth. Also, you'll note, my dear Lena, throughout his ministry is going to relate with the poor. Also, the birth of Jesus was a fulfillment of God's perfect plan for the salvation of humankind. God's perfect plan for the salvation of humankind. What does that mean, my dear Lena? God intended for humanity to be redeemed through the birth of Jesus. Remember, my dear Lena, when you go back to Genesis, you read about the story of the original sin. Original sin. the original sin, when you read the fall of humanity, you realize that Adam and Eve fell into sin. And then after that, humanity was termed sinners. So then, by Jesus' birth, God planned, it was God's purpose that man would be saved or would be redeemed through his birth. So Jesus was offered as a sacrifice to save humanity. And lastly, the fact that Jesus was born of a virgin. The virgin birth reveals his sinless nature. It was very significant that he be born of a virgin to reveal that he's a son of God, he's pure, he's sinless. You can imagine a situation, my dear Lena, where Jesus would have been born by an impure woman or an unchaste woman. That could have rendered him a sinner as well. But the fact that God chose Mary, who was sinless, that also reveals that Jesus is going to be sinless. Not necessarily sinless, but pure. Then Jesus is going to be sinless. And then let's look at the angel's visit to the shepherds. My dear Lena, after Jesus was born, then the angel came to the shepherds. And the story is found in Luke chapter 2, verses 8 to 20. But before we read the account, I want us to go through the background of shepherds. Who are these shepherds? So, shepherds, my dear Lena, were poor members of the Jewish community. Let's take note of poor. They are described as poor members. And they belonged to the lower class. I hope you will recall, my dear Lena, that we have three main classes in Palestine. Three main social classes. The first one being the lower class, then the middle class, then the upper class. Then the shepherds belong to the lower class, which means that they stood at the bottom rung of the Palestinian social ladder. They held no importance in society. And also they were largely hated because of the following reasons. Firstly, their job made them move from place to place, thus making it difficult for them to keep the laws. It was difficult for them to observe the laws because they were living a nomadic life. Hence, the Jews hated them. They were often accused of stealing livestock, and also they will graze. They were accused of grazing their livestock on people's fields. That's why they were hated, my dear Lena. Then let's look at the account, the angel's visit to the shepherds, the very same shepherds that we've just explored. The story is found in Luke chapter 2, verse 8 to 20. Here is the story, my dear Lena. Shepherds were keeping watch over their flock at night when the angel appeared to them. The glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with fear. Take note, they were filled with fear. As we know, the last encounter we had with an angel was with Mary, who also was filled with fear. Zachariah was also filled with fear. Remember, my dear Elena, we said it had been a long time since angels communicated with men. So it was quite a fearful experience for one, an intimidating experience for one to have an encounter with an angel. So the shepherds were filled with fear. The angel told them not to be afraid. And he told them that he had brought good news of great joy, which will come to all people. And what were the good news? The angel told them that a son is born in the city of David, and the city of David being Bethlehem. A Savior who is Christ the Lord. Then the angel gave them a sign. Here is the sign. You will find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes lying on a manger. And then after this, my dear Lena, suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts. So there were more angels now praising God. And then the angels disappeared. When the angels disappeared, the shepherds went with haste to Bethlehem. Let's take note of haste. They didn't delay. They went with haste to Bethlehem, where they found the baby and his parents. And then they saw the sign given by the angel when they reached Bethlehem. They saw the sign. Which sign was it? That the baby would be laid on a manger and wrapped with swaddling clothes. And then they testified about their encounter with the angel. They told the parents about their encounter with the angel. All who had wondered. And And Mary kept all these things to her heart. She pondered about these things in her heart. She never told anyone about these things. The shepherds returned, praising and glorifying God. And then, my dear Lena, let's look at the significance of the angel's visit to the shepherds. Why shepherds out of all people? The first significance of the angel's visit to the shepherds is that it symbolizes or reveals the humble nature of Jesus. We've already mentioned this point, my dear Lena, on the significance of the birth of Jesus. So here it comes again. It reveals or it symbolizes the humble nature of Jesus. Jesus' birth is humble. Thus, in his ministry is going to identify himself with the poor. We will see, my dear Lena, he's also going to tell parables. He's going to elevate the poor. He's going to mingle with the poor. Also, the angel's visit to the shepherds was important because it reveals the nature of Jesus as a good shepherd. What is the meaning of this? The angel's visit was more like an announcement. It was more like an indirect announcement that you shepherds go to Bethlehem to see another shepherd that is born. But take note of this, my dear Lena. The shepherd that was being born was different from these shepherds in a way that Jesus was no longer going to tend the sheep, but he was going to look after God's flock, which is mankind. And lastly, the shepherds were suitable recipients of the news. How were shepherds suitable recipients of the news, my dear Lena? We have mentioned in the background of the shepherds that they were living a nomadic life. Since they were living a nomadic life, they were suitable evangelists to spread the news of the birth of Jesus throughout the whole world. It would be very easy for them to spread the news. Hence, they were the suitable recipients. Also, they were suitable recipients taking into consideration the theme of the Gospel of Luke, which is the universalism of the Gospel. So, because Luke wanted to explore that theme, Luke wanted to present Jesus as a universal savior. Hence, the shepherds were a good choice because they were downtrodden in society, but we see them having to receive this message, having to be the first witnesses of the Messiah's birth. And then let's look at the symbolism, my dear Lena, closely linked to the significance. We have two main symbols in the account. The first one being the manger and the second one being the shepherds. How are they symbolic? Let's look at the manger. Jesus was laid on the manger after his birth. And we've already mentioned that the manger reveals or symbolizes his humble nature. So the fact that there was no room for him in the inn, the fact that he was laid where animals should be, it means that his birth is humble. And as a result, he's going to spread the gospel to the poor as well, since he had a poor birth. Also, we have the shepherds. They are symbolic in the story. How are they symbolic? They are symbolic because, as we've already mentioned, these was in a way foreshadowing that Jesus himself is a shepherd. He's going to lead God's flock. And also, the shepherds are symbolic in the sense that they reveal the humble nature of Jesus, as we've already said with the manger, because they belong among the marginalized in society. Also, the shepherds are symbolic because they reveal or they demonstrate the far-reaching nature of God's love. Meaning that God's love is far-reaching, it's non-discriminatory. Even the poor, even the outcasts in society are included in God's plan of salvation. And then let's look at the lessons, my dear Lena, that are drawn from the birth of Jesus as well as the angel's visit to the shepherds. From these accounts, we learn that God assigns even the downtrodden to carry out important tasks. You will recall, my dear Lena, we talked about the shepherds being the recipients of the message. So they are the marginalized or the downtrodden. So God assigns, God chooses even the things that are looked down upon to carry out important tasks, like going to witness the birth of the Messiah. He could have chosen people from high status, but God chooses the downtrodden. So it's a lesson to us even today. Secondly, we learn that we should obey God's instruction. Obey God's instruction and act promptly. More than obeying God's instruction, we should act promptly. If you recall, my dear Lena, in the account, we talked about the shepherds going with haste. They didn't delay after the angels disappeared. They went with haste to Bethlehem. So it's a lesson that as Christians today, when God gives us an instruction, we should not procrastinate. We should act promptly. And then lastly, we learn that we should be discreet when dealing with divine matters. I think I love this point, my dear Lena. Just like Mary, go back to Mary. After everything had happened, he kept these things to herself. So there is no need for Christians to go around announcing or advertising what God has done. So it's a lesson. Be discreet when dealing with divine matters. Because once you start advertising or telling the whole world, it's more like you are bragging. And then let's look at the characteristics of Luke that are portrayed in the birth of Jesus. Let's apply, my dear Lena, what we learned in the introduction. After reading the story of the birth of Jesus, we'll realize that the Gospel of Luke is revealed as the Gospel of the marginalized. How so? We talked about Jesus' birth being announced to the shepherds who were marginalized in society. So the Gospel is the Gospel of the marginalized. Also, the story of Jesus' birth reveals that the Gospel is universal. The universalism of the Gospel. The Gospel is universal in the sense that regardless of social status, regardless of background, the Gospel is for everyone. We see, my dear Lena, that Jesus was laid on a manger. We see that the news of Jesus' birth was passed to the shepherd. So which means that the gospel is universal. And the shepherds went on to tell others about what they had witnessed. Also, the gospel is a gospel of worship and prayer. Remember, in the introduction, we mentioned that throughout the Gospel of Luke, we see him featuring many incidents where there is worship and prayer. Take, for instance, in the birth of Jesus, we are told that when the angel appeared, there was a host, there was a multitude of heavenly hosts, angels who were seen praising God. Also, after the angels disappeared, we are told, my dear Lena, that the shepherds returned worshipping, praising, and glorifying God, which goes to show that the gospel indeed is a gospel of worship and prayer. And then here is our assessment, my dear Lena. Let's test how far we have been following. And the assessment that we have is on relevance. It's an evaluation question. We are testing if you can be able to see the relevance of what we have been talking about in the story. Do you think Christians have concern for poor people in society today? Do you think Christians have concern for poor people in society today? Give reasons for your answer and show you have thought about different points of view. Since this is an evaluation question, my dear Lena, you know you've been taught how to tackle this type of question. So you're going to state your views, your stand, followed by the statement, the argument, then you acknowledge other people's view. There's been a concern, my dear Lena, pertaining the length of responses for the questions. I think I forgot to mention that in the previous lesson. So let's do it this way. Since this question is worth 8 marks, it's very easy. When you respond, multiply the number of marks by 2. So if the question is worth 8 marks, it means you are going to utilize 16 lines. So that is what is expected in the exam. Go back for A1 and A2 as well. Since A1 and A2 is worth 6 marks, multiply the 6 by 2, then you are going to get 12 lines. So train yourself as early as now. As you respond to the question, make sure that you stick to the 16 lines because you have nothing more than that in the exam. So I wish you all the best as you attempt this question. And then, my dear Lena, we have come to the end of the lesson. Let's just go through the main topics or the content of our lesson. We began with the account of the birth of Jesus. We gave an account of the birth of Jesus in a manger. Then we looked at the significance of the birth of Jesus. And then we looked at the angel's visit to the shepherds. After that, we discussed the significance of the angel's visit, and then we explained the lessons drawn from the birth of Jesus. And then we looked at the characteristics of Luke that are portrayed in the birth of Jesus. And then for next lesson, please go and read Luke chapter 2, verses 25 to 40 and page 40 of the learner's book. And the topic will be the dedication or presentation of Jesus. Thank you very much for your time, my dear Elena.
Thank you very much, Tulisile, for your lesson. We're hoping the Form 4s enjoyed their lesson and they learned a lot about the birth of Jesus. Thank you so much. We'll be seeing you soon.
Yes, definitely. No, thank you very much.
All right, Form 4s and everyone back at home, please do not go anywhere. Sorry. Me and Lerato will be right back after this.
The change in technology, out-of-home digital media is designed to grab the attention of people who are always on the go. You can now watch your favorite show, Usile Breakfast Show and Dinzaba at 7 on your favorite YouTube channel.
It's simple. You can stream these shows by following these quick, easy steps. Number 1, open YouTube. Number 2, search for Eswatini TV and click on Eswatini TV. Number 3, after you had entered on Eswatini TV, look for Dinzaba or KPS. And while you at it, don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the bell button to get notifications of our video uploads and streams. And lastly, enjoy the stream. Stay home and watch Eswatini TV. Stay safe.
Welcome back to Home Study. Unfortunately, that was the last lesson for the day. How was your day, Lerato, aka Lera, aka
Oh my God, Larizi. Anyways, my day was good. It was fantastic, and I actually enjoyed the grade 1 lesson because it actually teaches the young ones to be responsible. So you no longer learn it at a later stage. You actually learn it very early. How was your day today?
My day was perfect. Thank you very much. Same as you. It was a very important lesson, the grade 1 lesson. Teach them at a very, very young age. Very important lesson about respect that was.
Exactly. So guys, your day tomorrow looks like this. From 2 p.m. until 2:30 p.m. you have the grade 0 lesson, which is Caring for Animals by teacher Bruno Masubu. From 2:30 p.m. until 3 p.m. is the French lesson for the grade 3s and 4s, which is Presenter by Mr. Mark Kiomba. From 3 p.m. until 3:30 p.m. you have Social Studies for the grade 5s and 6s by teacher Kukun Hlego, and the topic is Climatic Regions. From 3:30 p.m. until 4 p.m. is Literature for the Form 1s and 2s. The teacher is Mondi Mtetwa and the topic is Introduction to Drama. From 4 p.m. until 4:30 p.m. is Biology for the Form 4 learners. The teacher is Mlulegi Smelani and the topic is Levels of Organization. From 4:30 p.m. until 5 p.m. is the mathematics lesson for the Form 4 learners. The teacher is Lungelo Malinga and the topic is Graphing Trigonometric Functions.
Yes, of course, that's what your day looks like tomorrow, which is a Thursday, and we hope that you are looking forward to that. A reminder, of course, about our social media platforms. We are live from Monday till Friday from 2 p.m. until 5 p.m. on YouTube and on Facebook. And of course, a reminder about our WhatsApp number that you guys can use to ask any questions. It pops up from time to time on your screens that you might use that to text us any questions that you might have.
Please do not call us, and please send questions as relevant as possible. And we'll see you guys tomorrow, 2 p.m. sharp. From me, Nogwazi, and the team, it's goodbye, good night. See you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys.
Bye.